India actually, we're such a large country, we generate so much waste. But we are one of the largest net importers of waste. In our country, we don't segregate at the source. So when they're collecting waste from house to house, no one's separating even a wet and a dry. And the minute you do that, that waste is not recyclable, it's not reusable.
I don't even think most people know between wet waste and dry waste.
You're doing some absolutely incredible stuff on that front, I feel.
Thank you. You made me rethink a lot, which is great because I'm taking this back to my team tomorrow and we're brainstorming all of this.
The world is going to end in 20 years if we continue this way.
I mean, I think most people were waiting for that in 2012.
Oh, most people were counting the days.
All our products are made from recycled, recyclable, biodegradable, compostable materials, and they're all custom made for our clients.
How do you convince the government that right now we need to reduce the use of petroleums in India while India is in its maximum growth stage in the past, I don't know, centuries?
At the end of the day, it comes down to priority.
So, Priyanka, you have busted a massive myth for me.
I don't like these questions. Hi, I'm Priyanka Jhaveri. I'm the co-founder of the Men Packaging. The world clearly has a huge problem in terms of climate change, and one of the major reasons is the amount of waste that's generated by every country. And packaging is actually one of the largest contributors of landfill waste. So, stemming from that, we are India's first sustainable packaging company, and we transform discarded materials to create innovative packaging solutions. And we work with a variety of materials to sort of, right from flex, hemp, seed paper, cloth, bioplastics, paper, board, whatever it is, so that we can work with every industry and be a good fit for every client. And one of the major things that we're also doing, trying to do through our social media channels, is educate our consumers about how to live a more sustainable life. And one thing we always say is you don't need to be 100% sustainable. You don't need to be perfect in terms of sustainability, but all your baby steps always add up. So those are the two things we focus on. And in terms of packaging, right from packaging design, structural design, execution, delivery, manufacturing, as well as circular packaging solutions, disposal, waste management solutions. We take care of it all.
There is finally that push that, sustainability needed. I think that push is finally here.
It is, but then there's also companies, and now again going back to us being in a country like India. If I am a company that owns a product that is worth 5 rupees, my selling price is 7 rupees. My end consumer, who's probably in a tier three or tier four city, do they want to pay 2 rupees extra to get a sustainable product or get sustainable packaging? No, they don't. It doesn't matter to them. For them, their main criteria is getting that product at a low cost.
Should be the other way around. It should be two rupees extra for using a petroleum product. That needs to happen.
But then you need intervention from the government,
Absolutely.
which right now, we're not seeing that much of, sadly. And even if the government is intervening, it's no one's being held accountable. I think that's our biggest problem. There is no accountability for any company, any consumer whatsoever.
So the whole point is wherever there is no money to be made, right? But there is the greater good. That's where the government needs to come in. For example, healthcare, military.
Oh, the capitalism versus, social impact, greater good, however you want to call it.
No, 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 no. So capitalism is misunderstood. Best for the stakeholder. And stakeholder is anybody and everybody who is impacted by your company. Environment is very much of a stakeholder in a company, right? Now, the question becomes that does the government realize that it is supposed to be a referee in these kind of things? Does the government realize that 10 years, 20 years down the line, it might be an unbreathable, unsustainable, unlivable country if we continue in the manner that we are?
I don't even think it's an eventuality that's 10, 20 years down the line. We're seeing it happen year on year. At least in India, we're seeing it. Dude, you saw it in Canada with the wildfires. What the state was, 3 months back?
No, lesser, lesser.
Yeah, it was crazy.
We've had the hottest year since I think 1980 or so. I'm not clear on the facts, but it's been getting hotter. And only today I read an article about how in the next, 30 to 40 odd years, northern India is going to have such bad heat waves that survivability is going to be questionable. So if that's not a sign, I don't know what is. But the sad part is, like, there was recently a statement made by the Minister of Environment in India that said India contributes to 17% of the global population, but we are only responsible for 4% of climate change. So we are not the problem, but we will help find a solution. Great, you'll help find a solution, but I think everyone is part of that problem. Because the minute you say, I'm I'm here to help. Even that 4% is something you need to try and cut down. Just because you think in relative terms you're less than every other country doesn't make you good.
The point is, it's not a race,
Yeah,
right? And when it's not a race, and when you look at the local clusters, when you look at a place like Delhi, so I'm from Panipat and from Delhi, which is like, it's very difficult to breathe. I land there, I start coughing, and you can smell it, you can feel it. Your health is going down. It was some equivalent of a pack of cigarettes a day. That that is your 4%. You keep talking about this 4%, right? And this 4% is completely destroying the country. Bombay, you're seeing whales or dolphins or whatever was coming out in COVID. Why are they coming out? That is your 4%, right? Here we have massive lands in Canada, massive greenery, massive green belts in Canada. In the US, there's a lot of greenery, a lot of areas with no population. India's packed. India's jam packed, and each packing has its own local cluster of pollution, which is very difficult to digest.
100%. And now there's so much more industrialization as well, right? Which they're not taking into account at all because that's leading to so much more pollution than you have before. The more roads you're creating, the more space you're giving for more cars to exist. And it's, I don't know. I think, even the government, in the terms of how they speak, they're sort of caught between like, should we go for industrialization or are we going for sustainability? Because sometimes both can't work hand in hand. I don't have an answer for that either.
Yeah, it is a what do you weigh, how do you weigh what you weigh, and then you have to then get into the thing where their road technology, which has like solar powers things underneath, where you can where the roads get powered by the, like, they can generate electricity by the cars that go onto it. And there's a lot of other technologies, like there's a lot of alternate technologies that are coming up. Obviously things are going to get, like, that much more expensive, and you're spending that much more money. So you have to see the economic feasibility of it all, because as we said, like, it's great to have this conversation, but that 2 rupees really matters to most of India. And if we just look at India, like, if 5 cents 10 cents is mattering to the average American, even 1 rupee 2 rupees matters to the average Indian, because that is a massive massive deal for them. And the thing is, it's not just 1 rupee 2 rupees, right? It keeps adding up. If you have 1 rupee 2 rupee to every single thing you're purchasing, that whole thing just keeps adding up.
Priyanka, if you don't exist, and if companies like yours don't exist, what does the world look like in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years? Take your number.
I mean, I recently saw, there was those images of like landfills just covered in tons of waste from apparel companies. There was a lot filled with like packaging waste. I mean, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be polluted. It's going to be because, the more and more we use, like I said, packaging is the largest contributor to landfill waste. And if none of it is degrading, if there is nowhere for any of it to go, it's slowly going to take over because those your plastics and your unsustainable materials are actually living longer than humans are. So eventually, that's going to catch up with us. And so, when we say that a box is biodegradable and any packaging that we make, one, in a, people are less likely to recycle a product. Today, if, you had three products and it said you have to drop this off in three different bins, you're probably not going to do it. But if I am already giving you a product that's made from recycled materials, you're you're already doing your bit in that sense. And if that product were to end up in a landfill, so our paper is biodegradable, the inks we use are toxin free, so it won't contaminate groundwater on disposal. Our adhesives are starch based. So in 6 to 8 months, that box is not going to exist. And I think that's what we need to aim for. And there's so many times you'll go to a festival and there'll be a bin for dry waste, there'll be a bin for wet waste, and you'll be like, okay, I have French fries. There's a little bit of ketchup there. Where does it go? And I think that also comes from the fact that consumers are not aware. So if you are not aware, how are you supposed to make such an informed decision? And I remember when I heard the statistic, I was actually shocked because we're actually, when we buy recycled paper, because it's imported, we're actually paying import duties to make recycled paper. So instead of it being cheaper, it's more expensive for me to use a sustainable product than to use something that's made from virgin fibers, which is why people opt for it.
Priyanka, this is a very common theme with any sustainable product, which is that it tends to be more expensive.
Right.
However, coming back to India and how you were saying about wet waste and dry waste and recycling, I think number one, not used to having dustbins at festivals and people throwing things in dustbins because we're very used to just, throwing it where we're standing. So I think it's going to be a gradual process. Also, I don't know how many people, if you say, okay, this is to be recycled, know what recycling is. So today I can say, like, airports and all have these multiple bins, or at least they seem to have these multiple bins. I don't know how effective these multiple bins are, but I think couple of things that have to be done is number one, obviously wet waste and dry waste is relatively easy to distinguish between, or you can have say food waste and all other waste. But in terms of recycling and in terms of separating in that sense, there has to be an easier way to either educate people about it, or when the garbage is being collected, when the waste is being like processed from house to house and it's going to like the place where it's sort of aggregated and then goes further out to landfills and wherever. I think there has to be some way that it can be sorted either at that point, because I don't think people are aware of the differences.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest issues, lack of awareness and lack of accessibility, right? So even if I wanted to buy a sustainable product, it's not as accessible to me. Now, me being someone who's, on social media, who's reading a lot, who's, doing my research, yeah, maybe I'll find it. But for your average Indian consumer, they are not going to know where to go. So they are going to go for the option that's most accessible, right? Which is your largest problem. And in terms of awareness, they don't even know about the impact that it's having on the environment. So, even when we started, and I was calling like paper vendors to check if they have recycled paper. And they were like, yeah, 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 we have recycled paper. It's paper. So all paper is eco friendly, which is so untrue. But that's what, packaging is a very unorganized market in this country. But that's what they believe. And then that's what they tell consumers. So then a client will come to me and be like, this guy said it's eco friendly. So I'll believe he's eco friendly. I'll take his cheaper price versus coming to you. So there's also no transparency in terms of the materials being used. There's no transparency in terms of the processes. And I guess this is sort of uh, going on a little bit of a tangent, but coming back to government intervention, there's actually no government body that certifies a sustainable product in India. So besides bioplastics that require a CPCB code, right, which states that this is a bioplastic, it's not a plastic, because they decided to ban single-use plastics. Great. But if I am using a sustainable product, there's no way for me to tell whether it's sustainable or it's just, been marketed that way for me to think that, okay, I'm probably doing some good when I'm really not.
So Priyanka, you have busted a massive myth for me. I was one of those who thought that all paper is eco-friendly. So what is the difference between sustainable recycled paper and regular paper? And why is one eco-friendly and one not?
Sure. So the one of the main things with paper and what vendors usually like to use is most paper comes with like a thin film of plastic. Now that paper, so the paper might be, okay, great, you've cut a tree and they'll say which is unsustainable in itself. Now you made the paper, that plastic actually helps when you're printing on that paper, your colors appear brighter, it's more vibrant, you get that print and that luxurious finish that you want. With recycled paper, and next time you want to check if it's recycled, if you just tear a bit of the paper, the inside will actually be grayish brown. If it's not, it's virgin paper because it's completely coated. And so recycled paper actually absorbs a lot more color, so your print is more dull. So you have to find ways of, sort of altering your artwork to make it look brighter. So when you print it on that paper and that absorption happens, you're still getting the output that you wanted. So with paper, that's one way to tell. But with most products, it's very hard. Like so, with something like a fabric, everyone says, yeah, it's sustainable because it's reusable. But sometimes people don't reuse it. So if it's being tossed, then what? Like the same with plastic, right? Like people say, yeah, we can keep reusing plastic bottles. No one reuses it. Again, it's thrown.
This distinction makes a lot of sense because paper is a highly absorbent material, right? And the moment you have that, as you said, unadulterated paper, it absorbs more of what is being put on it. So therefore you need to, so what are some, like, how do you guys deal with this, and how are you making your packaging look as good, or how are you competing with the look aspect of it, and what are you guys doing in that sense?
Sure. So one thing that we're really pushing for is material transparency. So when we are dealing with clients as well, based on the paper that we give them, we will give them a construction certificate. Now, a construction certificate will essentially give you sort of all the ingredients that go into making that paper. So it'll be like 100% recycled fibers or 70% recycled short fibers and calcium and whatever else that goes into it. So your client knows that what's being used is actually what we're saying it is. And then you can obviously tear it and figure it out that works for paper. And like I said, in terms of artwork and making it more aesthetically pleasing, we do adjust the artwork and colors a little bit. And another thing that we use a biodegradable water-based coating. So that mimics plastic. It's not the same look. You're not going to have the same gloss and shine, but it will still protect um, your product in terms of tearing or colors not coming as bright. So, we have a solution to that. It's just not 100%. Like you're never going to be able to mimic plastic exactly when it comes to, that lining on paper. But also brands need to sort of accept that and be like, okay, this is great. This is good enough. I'm mimicking traditional packaging in every way I can. So an iPhone box, for example, it's not going to look any different if we make it or, it's made from virgin fibers. It's going to look exactly the same. And I think that's one of the few things when we started out was like busting the myths around sustainable packaging. Like if I told you I did sustainable packaging, the first thing that comes to people's mind is like a brown cardboard box, minimal black lettering on it. Like no one thinks beyond that. And so we are like, and they'll be like, oh, it's sustainable. Is it still durable? Is it strong? It probably won't hold my product. It's so ugly. So, those are the myths that we're trying to break, that we can do exactly what you want with sustainable packaging that you have with traditional packaging, same durability, same design, same aesthetic, same strength. But I think that was one of our biggest challenges, bringing in customers. And now that customers are aware, because we finally have like client work to show and like pictures to show, saying, okay, this is it, we made this and it's made completely from waste. People are starting to like believe it more. So I think that's been good. And like we said, more and more companies are trying to go towards sustainable packaging. And because packaging is such a low hanging fruit for every industry, right? We're just like, you do you, you focus on your product, we'll take care of the packaging. There's nothing that needs to change.
In terms of sustainability, as we spoke about already, that sustainable packaging or sustainable products are often more expensive than their virgin part counterparts.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways? Can you give us three ways that you have sort of brought the costs down?
Sure. So, like I mentioned, India is a net importer of waste. So, the minute you import that waste and you're paying that 100% duty on your paper, it's getting too expensive for the client as well as for you to even pitch to a client. So, something that we did is we work with, we have a network of waste management partners. So, we work with local waste management partners and smaller local paper mills, and we sort of have that segregated waste sent to them so that they can make us paper locally, and we're getting it at a same or similar price to virgin paper, because the only thing that's actually increasing the cost that much are your duties. which is so sad because that's something that needs to be subsidized. Especially if the government wants to promote sustainability, then your sustainable products in every way, or your sustainable raw materials even, need to be subsidized in some sense.
I'll play devil's advocate. Massive economies are built on petroleum products. Petroleum products are cheaper to manufacture, and petroleum products give access to the many in a very quick form. England was built on petroleum, US was built on petroleum, China is built on coal. We are a very young economy. There are tiers to problems. There are easier problems to solve and more important ones that a country faces. And then there are more difficult problems to solve, as well as lesser in importance compared to the other problems. India, as an existence, currently faces a lot more problems than America or Canada or England or Germany per se, than the developed nations, as we like to put them in a bucket, right? When we talk about subsidization happens via tax money. So people who pay their taxes, those taxes go to companies, and government pays the deficit to the company, which means that government will pay the net difference of the subsidy to the company, saying that the company still gets its entire price while the people are paying lesser.
Government of India, right now their priority, as a developing nation is probably like I said, sustainability doesn't come high on their list. Sadly, it's still lower down, which is what I said in terms of the statement, right? Like we are not contributing as much relative to other countries. So why focus on that when we have other problems to focus on? Whether it's, something like poverty, it's hunger, it's employment, whatever it is, those are more important to India right now. So I think one of the things then the government needs to do, and this happened with the bamboo toothbrush actually. So when the bamboo toothbrush came in all those years ago, it actually cost close to 200 rupees for a single toothbrush, and people didn't want to buy it. And the more people pushed it, the more it was marketed, the more the government promoted it as well. It didn't cost them anything to do that. The more they promoted it, because of the demand that India has created for that bamboo toothbrush, it now costs you 20 rupees in a span of 5 years, right? So that is possible. So I understand that you want to prioritize other things, especially in a developing nation. Like, yeah, 80% of your country doesn't care about sustainability. They need food, they need shelter. Those are their priorities compared to whether the product they're getting is sustainable. So I think it needs to come a lot from your larger corporations, where your corporations are saying, okay, we have set these goals, these are our measurable targets, this is our plan, and the government can hold me accountable, or my consumers can hold me accountable. So I think in a country like India, there needs to be more intervention from the government and the businesses rather than um, your rural consumer.
India as a culture, as a heritage, is so beautiful, because when you talk about the past, even the present, like in the southern side of India, you would see people eating on banana leaves. And I was seeing this documentary in which there's this Australian chef from MasterChef. I don't remember his name, but he goes throughout India and celebrates festivals with different parts of India, right? So he did an episode on Onam, and over there were like 10,000 people who were supposed to feed, and to feed them they were doing it on banana leaves, and the net waste on that is zero, right? But I am conditioned in a manner where, for me, there is something wrong with eating on banana leaves, right? I would rather eat on plates. And even there, I would rather eat on like a plastic or on a glass plate than I would eat on a steel plate, because steel plate again feels, lower market is the word. People like to use it, right? And all of the other things might be more sustainable. So similar to your toothbrush example, right? So we used to brush with, I think, the what stick, neem stick or some stick, right, of a tree, and then plastics come in and we completely transform ourselves over to plastics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can we use culture as catalyst to go forward in the sustainability direction?
Definitely. And we were actually having a conversation about this some time ago. We do this annual sustainability summits. We have people from all over the world and different stakeholders in the industry come in to talk about the future of sustainability. And someone from the US, one of our participants from the US, she said, you know, your sustainability targets have to be segmented. So when you're talking about the 80%, the 20%, your 5%, your 1%, there needs to be the way you pitch sustainability, the way you are trying to make that change happen, the way you're conducting that dialogue has to be very different. And you know, there's a lot of memes on the internet as well, right? You see, like India actually, as a country and as a community, just based on culture, we tend to save all our Tupperware. We get, you know, takeout boxes. You'll have someone storing some other food in it, right? You'll have someone storing achar in it. You'll have someone storing peanuts in it. It's reused, right? So as in terms of culture, like, you know, there was also that meme where there's just Indians. We when it comes to toothpaste, we'll try to get out every single last drop of that toothpaste before we throw it out.
I should get the toothpaste tube out from my bathroom. It's like completely skinned out. And I have like three other toothpaste sitting in reserves, but no, they'll wait for their chance.
Exactly. So it's sort of inbuilt.
This Tupperware conversation, I remember we'd gone to drop my sister and we were staying in New York for a bit, I think 10 days or 12 days. And every time we got takeout or anything like that, my mom used to save those containers, even for those 10, 12 days. And she diligently reused those containers every time she made some food, or she had to send something to my sister or anything like that. So it's a very inbuilt thing that, you always tend to reuse everything you can. And there's that very famous example, right, with that tin of cookies that used to come with that, with which now, which is supposed to just always have sewing equipment in it. But yeah, so that way, if you look at it, we in India are very, very good with reusing anything that we deem is worthy of reusability, but we're also as quick at being like, oh no, this is not reusable, chuck it.
Yeah.
So we're very, very quick at passing that judgment as well. So we have to now, I think, somewhere change our definition of what is reusable and what isn't.
Yeah.
Because if a particular takeout container is not plastic but paper, we will not reuse it. We will throw it away and we will be like, yeah, this is not something that we can reuse. Or if we put any of our vegetables in it or something in it, this something might leak or something might rupture, or this can't be used again and again and again. Whereas with a plastic container, we're very happy washing it and using it as many times as we want to.
I want to get in on that point. That is a very interesting point, right? I'll tell you why. We like to believe paper bags are more eco-friendly than plastic bags. For a paper bag to be eco-friendly, more than that of a regular plastic bag, you need to use the paper bag at least 50 times. For a plastic bag to be eco-friendly, you need to use it some 700 times, or some those are the demographics. However, the carbon footprint of manufacturing a paper bag is at least 10x more than the carbon footprint of manufacturing a single use plastic bag. How do we get these numbers out? These numbers are very confusing. And to most people, it's much simpler to say paper bag is eco-friendly. But my paper bag, I use it once. Let's say I go to a mandir, get a prasad, and the paper bag is gone in one use. Right? So how do we educate? This is so difficult.
Yeah, and it's, you know, because you said that, it comes back to glass, right? People think, oh, I'm using glass. It's so much better than using plastic. But your carbon footprint with glass is so much higher than manufacturing that plastic bottle. Now, if you're manufacturing that plastic bottle, consuming that plastic bottle and recycling it properly, you'd rather use the plastic bottle. But because we don't do that last bit of recycling, then you're going back to, okay, glass works, I can keep using glass. But then the other thing with glass, like you said, right, you have to use it multiple times for it to even make up for the impact it's had on the environment in terms of manufacturing. It tends to break, it's expensive. So again, people are like, oh, we're not opting for this. So I think, you know, any material you look at, people have an issue with it. So whether it's plastic, whether it's paper, whether it's you know, tin, whether it's glass, it's always an issue. So plastic actually is not that harmful to manufacture. It's just it never degrades. It's the same with glass, though. I don't know how long it takes glass to degrade.
The other thing though that I found out recently was that in India, the number of PET bottles, or like the bottles that we get our water and Coke and all that in, 90% of PET bottles are recycled in India. It's one of the highest percentages of. Yeah, I in fact just fact checked myself, and yeah, 90% of PET bottles are recycled, and the recycling rate is 90%. I was shocked when I yeah, I was shocked myself when I heard that number. But
That's impressive.
yeah, funnily enough, we spoke so much about the lack of recycling that we have in certain areas.
No, but it's actually interesting because we went for a concert, I think sometime last year, and they had bins at every exit, or near every food stall or drink stall or whatever it was. And at every place that they had a bin, they had one person standing there telling that person exactly which bin they should be throwing their garbage in. So I think that was super helpful because there was one person who knew what was going on, knew what was supposed to be done, and literally just standing there policing people like this goes here, this goes here, this goes here. And if that becomes, a normal part of, say, something like an event or a concert where you have your maximum usage in terms of your plastic bottles, your wastage in terms of paper plates, plastic cups, whatever it is, maybe people will start, remembering that and start like it'll become a habit.
No, no, no. In Canada, we have three bins. So we're supposed to maintain three bins even at the house. There's supposed to be a recycle bin, there's supposed to be a regular bin, and then there's supposed to be a compost bin. You're supposed to. If you don't do that, there's a $200 fine. If if they find non-recyclable material with recycled material, there's a $200 fine. It's the same as traffic rules, right? So people in Canada, in the US, they'll drive very well. Because if you don't drive well, there are massive fines. You might be down like $1,000, which is 60,000 rupees or 70,000 rupees for those in India, right? It's a lot of money to pay for like driving. $200 for garbage is like 12,000 rupees for garbage, for putting something wrong. So you become conscious. You have to. You don't have an option, or you'll just go broke over your garbage.
Now I think there's a similar scheme that was started in India some time ago where the government was offering tax rebates for buildings that correctly recycle their waste. So then they would give like a 10 to 15% tax rebate on their property tax. The problem is, I'll talk about it today. 90% of the people I'm talking to don't even know that exists because the government clearly hasn't marketed that enough for them to, have to give that sort of money back to your buildings or societies. So I think, like you said, it needs to be the other way around. Like either you do something, like you as a government do something about it, or then you make consumers more conscious where you're ensuring that, like you said, they feel obligated to or more conscious about um, their day-to-day practices.
It's so successful in Delhi. Super successful in Delhi, right? So what they did is they put cameras everywhere. And now when you're in Delhi, you feel like you're being watched all the time. So you have to drive proper.
Same, they've done the same thing in Calcutta. There are now speeding cameras, red light cameras everywhere, and you get a text message instantaneously. So there are certain places where now people are not speeding and where people are driving in a better way. However, the downside with this is that you're trying to find loopholes. So you know exactly where the cameras are placed and where they're not placed. And then you tend to end up like, you tend to break the rules elsewhere. And the thing with India and fines is the moment the fines are manually handed out, there is always a way to avoid the fines. So you have that conundrum as well.
Yeah, the police is paid so low that if the fine is too high, let's say the fine is 1,000 rupees, the police wala will tell you that, oh, you know what, the fine is 1,000 rupees, you give me 200, I won't fine you. What are you gonna do? So whenever, again, goes back to the conversation of wherever you need welfare, you need a referee. Wherever you need good for the society and for the long run, which people will not realize now, you need government intervention, right?
Yeah.
More than a referee, you need a well paid referee because otherwise, there is always a way around it.
Yeah, and I think people are just not held accountable. So, my father actually works in the export industry, so he exports garments all over Europe. And Germany, the government of Germany actually last year came up with a rule with a list of fabrics, right? So they said these are the sustainable fabrics. If you don't use any of these fabrics, you cannot export or manufacture in our country. And it came down to that. So now every person who exported anything to Germany, manufactured anything in Germany, was scrambling to sort of, source those materials and use those materials because otherwise they wouldn't have a business left. And you need like 18 or 19 like certifications to prove that you're actually using all of these fabrics. And that comes from the government because I don't think anyone else has that much hold or accountability when it comes to a business or a consumer. But it's so interesting how that happened. I don't know how that would work in a, like we said, right, in a country like India because there's no one holding you accountable.
How do we change it?
That's the question of the century. Like I said, baby steps, I think it needs to work from both the consumer side, business side, and there needs to be government intervention, and everyone needs to take those smaller steps towards a more sustainable tomorrow. Like it's something that needs to be just ingrained as part of your like my business operations that I'm trying to do this. And the sad part is, which is what we've been noticing a lot, like CSR, sustainability, all of these have become such buzzwords. Like people are just throwing it in because they say, "Oh yeah, sustainability is trending, ESG is trending. Like let's include this word, so it's great for marketing. Like we can show we're a sustainable company when we're really not." And when you actually think about it, there's no real, I mean, there is a definition to sustainability, but people define that word very differently. So, me as a company, I'm saying I am a sustainable company because I use, my raw materials are sustainable. There's an apparel company that's saying I am sustainable because I only use renewable resources. There's another company that's saying, oh, I'm doing these buyback programs. So I'm being sustainable as well because I'm reusing. So there's no definition of it, right? It's all relative. Everyone will say, I'm sustainable because I did this, this, or this. But I think a lot of companies, and it's really sad, are using it more as a buzzword or a marketing gimmick rather than doing something about it. Again, lack of accountability. We need a governing board in India that actually, one, has some sort of certification system where you say, okay, I certify that this is sustainable. Have 100 criteria for that. That's fine. But, there needs to be some kind of like parameter that states that this product is sustainable. There needs to be some amount of accountability for businesses marketing themselves um, as sustainable. So there's actually this UNFCC certification. A lot of companies have been using it. It's something that's free and you can download. If you're not, and you sort of like check boxes saying, I did this, I am sustainable, these were my savings, I checked my resources. But no one's holding you accountable. So if you haven't done it, it doesn't matter. Right? So I think it's a little bit of everything that just needs to come together and sort of push this forward. But I think the first step is really just I think government intervention in businesses taking a lead.
I have a very nice, very uninformed, and very uneducated answer to your problems.
Please tell me. I'd love to hear.
A private company could come in, and a private company, instead of a government company, could start auditing for the ESG certificate. For example, in the US, we have this thing called a chartered financial analyst, right? A CFA. CFA is completely privatized. But when you pass the exams for the CFA, the certificate that you get is recognized by all financial institutes saying that, oh, yeah, this person knows finance, right? So, because the government cannot place it on a higher priority, and because the government cannot place ESG as a whole, environment, social, and government governance on a higher priority, why not let the private sector take over?
So, it's interesting because it's actually something we tried to do. And then people in India are like, okay, but the government didn't say it. So how does it matter? Who are you? Right?
It's about getting to that point where people can say, okay, yes, you are now credible enough that the government recognizes you. So it's again that whole thing that how do you as a company get the government to recognize you? Because for that, you need to have X number of people who you have certified. And how do you get people to let you certify them without the government having recognized you?
You need 5, 10 people to trust you. Yeah, pretty much.
It's a complete chicken and egg problem.
And it exists everywhere. It's funny to see the number of industries this problem exists in its own way. And everywhere you're thinking, okay, what do I do? It exists for us. Today, how are we as Thought Bistro appealing to you as a founder? Today we don't have that many people who are viewing us. We're still getting to that. We're still building that base up. Until we build that base up, we are not attractive to founders. And until we don't have founders who people want to listen to, how do people come to listen to us? So it just, that problem comes again and again in so many different ways. But anyway, coming back to sustainability and coming back to certification, how what are you guys at Mend doing so that you can say, yes, this is the one, two, three, four, five things that we are doing, so that says that we are sustainable? What are the standards you all are holding yourself to?
I'll add a little bit to his question too. So when you talk about people are now, you are advertising to people saying that I am green or I am environmentally friendly, means that people have started looking for environmentally friendly. When people are looking for environmentally friendly, you could just completely change your approach to let's make people even more environmentally friendly while waiting for the referee to come in, right? So what is Mend doing to do that?
So, just to start off with, in terms of what we're doing in terms of sustainability and sort of transparency. So, the way our process works, I've given you a brief on the company. A client will approach us, they'll place their order. Right after that order is delivered, we will send that construction certificate, right? Saying that these were the ingredients that went into your paper, these were your inks used, like this is what was done. And then we will give them a summary of statistics that says, by using this paper, by using these inks, your savings in terms of water has been this much. These are the number of trees you saved. These are this was the amount of um, waste that you diverted from landfills. This is the energy you save. So, it's a report that we send the client so they know exactly what the impact they've made is. And I think that sort of also helps clients understand, okay, we're not just another packaging company, we're giving you real numbers here. Then going one step forward, like we said, we go beyond that, and we tell clients we are part of a movement called Ecology, where we plant an employee. We not a plant an employee. We plant a tree for every employee every month.
Priyanka, please don't plant employees. We don't want people
To
growing on trees. There are enough people in India already.
Oh God, that would be a nightmare.
People in India are already growing on trees, man.
True,
I think we're if you had to come up with some equivalence, I think people are growing on trees. I don't know how much good and skilled people are growing on trees, but people are definitely growing on trees.
true. But yeah, so one of the things that we're doing is we're telling clients that we can help you go one step further, right? So we will help you offset the waste that you create. So, for example, if you are a company that's manufacturing bottles, right, and your waste generated is, say, 70 kgs per month, we will recycle that amount of waste in in your name so that we know that your carbon footprint is reducing. That's one. Number two is the planting trees. Number three is your extended producer's responsibility. So, for larger companies, it is an environmental policy where you have to extend the lifetime of your product. So companies are obligated, and for larger companies, it's mandatory. For smaller and mid-sized companies, not that much. So we help people take care of their EPR. In terms of their CSR services, we have ways that we can not only educate their consumers, but we can also consult and help you find solutions on how to make your everyday business practices more sustainable, how you can dispose of your waste properly. Is there a buyback program that for some of our larger beauty brands, that buyback product when they have buyback program when they have a larger retail presence is easier to do. Maybe you can tie up with schools. Maybe at every store that you have all over the country, if you drop off, um, you know, your six empty containers, you get a free lipstick. And it's something, I think, at the end of the day, like, when we're working with our clients, we're also understanding so much more about what their consumer needs and what they need as a business and what their employees need, and we sort of cater it that way.
What about manufacturing?
We work with a vendor network all across the country, so we don't manufacture ourselves.
So how do you enforce any of these on the vendors, or how are you making sure that they are doing?
So we ensure that all of our vendors are using our raw materials, right? Like I said, we work with our local paper mills, and then we have distributors that distribute to our vendor network. And so we have that proof of payment in terms of them picking up from that particular distributor itself. That's one. And in terms of dealing with the vendors, sometimes it's hard, especially when you're not in the same place as the vendor in terms of communication. But the reason also we wanted to do this is a lot of people, like a lot of your tier two cities, in terms of, like I said, packaging is an unorganized market. They don't have access to packaging vendors or good quality packaging. So they always go to, your metro cities to sort of source that because your quality is better, your raw materials are cheaper, like it just makes more sense. And the minute you do that, the carbon footprint you're causing with, your transportation costs, your transportation time, overall, all of that can be reduced. So one thing we do is if you are sitting in Calcutta, I will work with a vendor closest to you to execute your order. If I don't have a vendor in Calcutta, for example, I will work with the next best option. If there are no vendors in Calcutta whatsoever, which usually is not the case, but we will work with one closest to you just to ensure that your carbon impact is not that high. So even when we're giving you that sustainability report, like I mentioned, right, all of this plays a role.
Priyanka, let's hone in on the carbon offset. So Vishad and I had this episode, and in that episode, we really discussed these carbon offsets and carbon contracts, right? Carbon contracts in the US are largely a scam. Why are they a scam? Is your company produces this much carbon, or your company has produced the right to produce this much carbon. You are not going to produce as much carbon, so why don't you sell me the rest of the carbon things that you have, and then I'll show them that I could have produced this much carbon, but I have not produced this much carbon, so I am net carbon neutral, right? Another way of doing this is purchase a forest and then say that in this forest, amongst these five trees, I will not cut these trees. Because I did not cut these trees, they would have been cut in the first place. So all of their carbon offset is now mine to own. So even though I produce more carbon because I didn't cut these trees, that carbon didn't go away, right? When you say I'll plant a tree, how do you measure how much carbon offset that tree actually does? How do I know you actually planted the tree? How do I know that tree was planted because of me?
So to answer your question, about the trees, so the way ecology does it is that it's a program, it's a global program. I think it's headquartered in Europe. What they do is they'll say, okay, fine, I'm paying for each tree, right? So I'm paying for that tree to be planted. I'll get the coordinates of that tree and they will give me that carbon impact. So if you go on our website and you click on ecology, you will be able to see our data of how many trees have been planted according to the number of, you can check it out right now. It's ecology, ECOLOGI. So it actually gives you that data, which I think, maybe it's a scam. Who knows? Data can also be like manipulated, but it's giving you that data which actually builds your trust in a client.
Oh, I love the honesty, man. I'm so happy with this. Just you going like we got you to a we got it to a point where you just went,
No, I'm just, I was talking about it and then
yeah, but there is a possibility that that data is all fake.
yeah, I was just thinking about it. I mean, anyone can produce data, but at the end of the day, data is also what builds trust. I mean, the whole world's working on data. If your data is fake, then what is real?
I mean, yeah, you can go complete cynic and be like, yeah, that data is fake, this is fake, everything is fake, the world is coming to an end, we're all gonna die. Like, you can that's always a very easy doomsday soothsayer approach. So I mean, well, we can all be that. Why can't we? But I think we'd all like to look at the positives.
Let me throw another spanner in the mix.
I don't like these questions.
Let's say you go into the discovery of ecology now after this conversation and you're like, I am not convinced they're doing what they say they are doing, right? What other method could you use to actually do a carbon offset? Why not plant trees in the local clusters in India where we are living? Because that would be the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, so there are actually a lot of companies in India that will do that for you. It all goes back to not having a certification, not having credibility, not having that data, because we don't have the technology to build that trust. So right now we're doubting, okay, is this data real? But if I have no data to begin with, then how do I ever know? So I think that's what it is. And in terms of carbon offset, it's tricky, right? Because you're saying I am not doing this, so I am sustainable. But I also think that that is one step forward. Because otherwise, if today I said, okay, I have 10 rupees, I spent eight, yeah, I have savings. But if I have 10 rupees and there's nothing happening to me, I'll spend all 10. It's not making any difference to me. So I think in that sense, like then companies are like, okay, I have a point to prove. So even that 2%, if every company is doing it, will eventually help. And like I said in the beginning, right, we always say smaller steps. So if it is convincing a company, like, let me not do this, it might be a step in the right direction.
I just want to add, like, say that. But the thing is, they're not saying that I have 10 rupees, I've spent 8, 2 is saving. They are saying I earned 10 rupees, I spent 8, so I actually earned 2 more. So they're saying I earned 12 rupees. That is where the problem lies. Or if they say we saved 2 rupees and that's okay, that is completely understandable and that's the way it should work. But they're taking that 2 rupees as extra earning.
The other issue is I earned 10 rupees this year and I saved 2. Next year, I'll just allocate the budget of 12 and then I will say I earned 2 when I spent 10. And then next year, I'll allocate the budget of 16 and I'll say I earned 2 and I'll spend 14, which is also happening.
Then there needs to be someone saying that you're spending over a certain amount or, polluting over a certain amount where you pay. Then you're just penalized for it.
That's the issue that we have with carbon offsets, and that's why Akhil said that carbon offset is a scam. But see, like what you're doing, for example, is that you're saying that if the company is generating 70 kilos of waste, you are actively recycling 70 kilos of waste for them. So that is still, you're saying, you're not saying that okay, the company could have produced 100 kilos, so therefore they themselves have recycled 30 kilos. You're actually doing the recycling there. That is why what you all are doing is different from carbon offsets.
Yeah. No, but I think in terms of EPR as well, under EPR, companies are obligated to go through this whole carbon offset system, which we don't actually focus on that much. But both in terms of what we are doing is, like I said, if you are generating that waste, we'll one find a way for you to properly dispose of that waste, right? So in every state in India, your wet waste belongs to the BMC. So any waste management company has no authority over your wet waste. We cannot touch it. All your dry waste, we'll tell you how, we'll give you a form and we'll say, you divide it between electronic waste, this waste, that waste. There's like 32 different categories. And when we do that, and that's how your Raddiwalas also work, right? They'll say, you give us this waste, and we'll give you like 10 rupees for this waste that you've given to us. And now there's actually a lot of companies where they are, your waste management companies that will pick up that waste for you. Whatever can be disposed of and properly recycled will be done. And anything that's reusable, you have a choice of either getting your 5, 10, 15, whatever rupees for it, or they give it to NGOs where a lot of these kids actually use it for arts and crafts to like make bags or like I'm sure you'll have seen all those Lay's bags, those bags made out of like Lay's wrappers and chocolate wrappers that just there's no way of doing anything with them. So they're finding a way to extend the lifestyle, going into EPR, extend the lifetime of that product. So that's essentially what we are promoting. And then, like we said, for everything you generate, we will recycle that much for you.
Priyanka, you put yourself in a very difficult position, right?
I
So,
know.
no, no, no. On a daily basis, you are fighting the world and trying to change how the world perceives things, and it is tough. Hence the tough questions, right? Hence the my intent is good, and I am trying to do the carbon offset. I do not know if it is true or not, and the acceptance of that is incredible. My intent is good. I will recycle or I'll at least attempt to recycle as much packaging as you're using. I do not know how much that works, but at least my intent is good. You are currently using companies whose intent is only not there. So you're doing some absolutely incredible stuff on that front, I feel.
Thank you. You made me rethink a lot, which is great because I'm taking this back to my team tomorrow and we're brainstorming all of this. I'm going to come back to you on a lot of things that may not be scams and a lot of data that's hopefully not a scam.
100%, Priyanka. We look forward to uncovering all the scams and not all this and the things that are actually true to as greater of an extent as we can, because this conversation of scam and where is this money going or is this actually happening is not limited to just carbon offset or planting a tree. It's limited, it extends to so many things. Today we say NGOs and charity and CSR. This then brings in a much larger conversation where a lot of people, where they're like, look, I have money to give, but I don't want to give money here because I don't know where my money is going to go. How do you track your money? How do you say that, okay, today if I'm giving money to XYZ organization, how can I hold XYZ organization responsible, and how can they prove to me that my money has gone here? So I guess it works in a similar way, at least here with planting a tree or something like that. You can, I guess, tie the payment back to something me like, yeah, this is what was received and this is the certification that was, like, lot of places will send you like a thing that's saying that, hey, here your tree was planted and these are the sort of certificates there, or this is the sort of birth certificate of your tree, so as to say. So a lot of people do that, as far as I remember, or what I've heard.
No, no, sorry. I was just saying that I think, the largest challenges we faced in this industry, and I think most industries probably face it, is accessibility, transparency, and traceability. Those are three things that, regardless of your industry, are really lacking in India. And like I said, we do this annual sustainability summit, and this year our topic, which was actually traceability and transparency in supply chains, and how it's like impacting the future of India. And at the end of that conversation, I think we're talking for 2 hours. There's no concrete, like tangible, measurable solutions targets. Like everyone has their opinions, but it's like, you're getting stuck at every point because you need a lot more moving parts to make things happen. So, any small step that anyone can take, like you said, right? If anyone has good intent and is taking that step, no matter how small it is, no matter how insignificant it may be, 1,000 people making those like tiny steps towards a better tomorrow, or raising awareness, or trying to do that research, or recycling, whether it's an act or a conversation, or really, you know speaking up about it. I think slowly, slowly, that's all going to add up, rather than one person being that hero and saying, I am doing everything and no one else is. So it's always like, 1,000 people coming together versus one person doing it perfectly is always better. And that's what I'm hoping for, within our industry and India as a whole as well.
So, Priyanka, the incredible things that you're doing, I don't think it can be achieved just by one company. I feel like a lot of companies will have to come in the packaging space and actually actively pursue exactly your endeavors. So let's break it down for the viewers. You have been in this for 3 years now. What are the challenges that you have faced? How do you acquire customers? And if you're comfortable, we would love some numbers on here. What kind of revenues you have driven? What kind of costs do you incur? How is it being remote? If I were to start your exact thing today and hopefully make it faster than in 3 years, right? Get there faster than you are. What do you know that I don't know?
I think, just to start off with the challenges, which is now something that I'm more aware of than I was when we started, is again going back to accessibility and awareness. There's a lack of awareness both on the vendor side in terms of what actually is sustainable, and there's a reluctance in terms of doing that R&D to create something that's sustainable. On the customer side, there is again lack of awareness as to what a sustainable product or sustainable packaging entails, and then that reluctance to pay extra for it. um, I think, with both these, there has, I think, since COVID, we've seen a lot of traction in terms of people wanting to be more sustainable, but again, not knowing where to start. There have been a lot more companies that have come up that are focusing on sustainability. You have sustainability aggregators, packaging, like corporate gifting, like all across. So I think for me, going back that many years, I know exactly what to expect I think I have more knowledge, right, in terms of what I need to do. And, one of the saddest things when we started out is packaging is also a very male dominated industry. We are three female founders, and, we had a completely female ops and sales team as well. And we always had this one, male employee. And just the way that vendors spoke to, address the female employees versus the male employees, they never took you seriously. After a point, it was like, how do you tackle that issue? Because they're just like, okay, she's just calling. She doesn't know any better. Let me scam her. I know I can charge her more. My male employee would call 5 minutes later with the same requirement. My cost would be 10 times cheaper. He would be spoken to. I'd have a conversation. I'd have information. I think also tackling that now has been much easier because, you know, what we've realized is you just have to play that as a strength. We came in saying, I know my stuff. This is what I know. This is what I know I'm supposed to expect from you as an answer. And then, really building those relationships. Our whole company, because we have such a large vendor network across India, I think the foundation of our company lies in building human relationships. And that's something we also, really inculcate into our team. We really promote networking. We encourage them to do one coffee chat a week with any stakeholder in the industry. So, whether it's a vendor, it's a client, it's someone in the sustainability space, someone who's an entrepreneur, whatever it is, because it really helps you stay in touch with the industry, what's going on in the world. And more often than not, most industries are facing the same challenges you are. It's just tweaked to, their industry, but your problems are the same. So then you find a way to like build that network and really solve problems together. We always say, like collaborate over compete.
Let's get into the money. How much money have you made, and are you profitable?
We are profitable in terms of revenue numbers. It's actually something we've never discussed. But I'll give you some numbers in terms of traction and percentages. So in terms of we've done about we've worked with about 1,000 clients so far. Let me just pull some up. And over the last 3 years, our average order values have been about 80,000 rupees per order. On average, there are obviously smaller orders, larger orders. And we do have MOQs in place, but that's been good. And our customer retention rate has actually been increasing, which has been something that, we've been actively working towards because the minute you packaging is something that every industry, every client needs all the time. So we do like a lock-in period of a month, of 6 months to a year to 3 months, where every month, like on a specific date, that packaging will be delivered to their warehouse. So they don't have to think about it. They don't have to do anything about it. It's just locked in. The price is locked in because also another challenge is that paper prices keep fluctuating. So product prices keep fluctuating. You have to maintain that in order to retain your clients. So our customer retention rate has gone up to 34% this year. And yeah, I think another thing that's been huge for us has been our international orders. So with international orders, usually the quantities aren't so high, but your order your margins are slightly higher with a Europe or a US.
Priyanka, if I give you $2 million today, what will you do with it? Where will you invest the money?
Oh, 100% R&D. I think the only way to keep staying, encouraging people to use it, one is to make it more accessible, right? And the more technology we bring in and the easier it is for us to bring in alternatives to existing packaging, the easier it will be for people to switch to. So bioplastics was a new technology in India. It's still very expensive. If you move from plastic to any other material, it's always going to be expensive. There's no doubt about it. So you move from plastic to paper, it's going to be more expensive. But because of the ban on single-use plastics, people are paying that premium. Now we need a solution to thermocol. We need a solution to plastic, and there are countries around the world that do have solutions. But all of it costs money. It costs money to bring that equipment. It costs money to conduct that research. So I think that is definitely the way forward. Like right now, we're working on this marine degradable film, which essentially mimics plastic in every way. But if you put it in hot water, it will dissolve in 5 minutes,
Wow.
right? So it's still work in progress. But for any of this research, right, you do need money. So far we've been focusing on, okay, these are the existing materials that exist in India. Let's make different packaging designs. Let's find a way to make it more reusable. Let's find a way to like cut down um, one of our first clients, actually, I'll tell you this story on how we sort of went about their packaging. And it's a very silly thing, but small things can really impact your carbon footprint. They sell pans, and they used to have this large box where they, would put three pans and then five pans. So they had two different box sizes. All we did was we changed the way that they folded their pans. It saved 33% of the box space. It not only saved on their raw materials, it brought down their shipping cost because it's calculated by volumetric weight. Instead of being a 1.5 kg box, it was now a 1 kg box. So you're saving on your shipping costs, your logistics costs per order. You're saving on box costs and you're saving your raw material. And I think, and even in terms of finding, so that's one thing we started doing, right? These are existing materials. Let us find a solution for you. And um, you know, we used instead of padded mailers that usually come with bubble wrap, we started using like a paper wrap, a cushion wrap to sort of have the same effect of I mean, the same cushioning and protection for your product, but it's made with existing materials. And I think one of the main things we're lacking is money in this space because if we don't have R&D and D and we're not able to bring this technology up, people are never going to have an alternative to move to.
Great stuff, Priyanka. I mean, this is just wonderful.
Thank you.
As much as I would like to continue the conversation, I think there are so many spaces that can still be explored. There are so many tangents that can still be explored.
We'll almost certainly have a part two to our conversation.
Oh, great. I'd love that.
We're getting her back once she's at 1,500 clients, once she's developed this marine film. We're gonna speak about all of that.
Oh, there's lots in the pipeline. We're also experimenting with seaweed.
So, Priyanka, we have this tradition on our podcast where our previous guest has left a question for you. We'd like you to answer that and leave a question for our next guest.
Okay.
So, the question for you is, how do you keep up with changing trends in your industry, or be it marketing specific? How do you keep up with changing trends?
I think the best way to stay relevant again is to keep innovating. You have to keep creating. You have to keep pushing yourself to create new products, new designs. Whether it's new materials, yeah, that's a more long-term goal. But like I said, we had to stay relevant by saying, yeah, we have this material. What else can we do with it? And I think that's the only way to stay on top of it and keep it more, keep it more exciting for your consumer every step of the way.
And your question?
Hmm.